The engine hissed as I tightened the last bolt. Sweat dripped from my forehead onto the polished chrome, and I wiped it away with the back of my hand. The old '67 Camaro I was working on purred like a contented cat. Nothing fancy, just a clean rebuild. Satisfying work. Simple work. The kind that made sense. That's when I heard the buzz. It came from across the workbench, Clara's smartwatch, charging beside her phone. I had borrowed it earlier to time an engine diagnostic and forgotten to put it back in her purse. The screen lit up with a name that hadn't popped up in months. Ethan Wells. I stared at it for a second, thinking maybe he had the wrong number. Then the message flashed. Last night was unreal. Can still taste you. Tell your gearhead husband he can keep polishing his wrenches. I've already tightened all your bolts. I froze. For a moment, I thought maybe it was a joke. Some gross, mistimed joke between friends. But then more messages rolled in, like slow punches to the gut. You coming by tomorrow? Same hotel, same heels? Tell your husband to go kiss his carburetor goodnight. God, he's so obsessed with those rust buckets. You'd think he was building a damn spaceship. You deserve better than a man who sleeps with engines. And then one from her. From Clara. He's harmless. Pathetically obsessed with those cars. He probably hasn't noticed I switched perfumes. I stared at that message the longest. Pathetically obsessed. Like the nights I stayed in the garage rebuilding engines so she could keep the lights on didn't count. Like the years I spent saving every penny to buy our house didn't matter. Like the business I built with my bare hands, Ellison Classic Restorations, was just some sad hobby to her. I stood there, gripping the wrench, knuckles bone white. My heart should have been racing, but it wasn't. It was cold. Cold and steady. I finished the job anyway. With mechanical precision. Checked every bolt, every line. Cleaned the oil pan. Replaced the filter. I even gave the hood one last polish. Because that's what I do. I fix things. But as I wiped my hands clean, a thought struck me like a steel bolt to the chest. Some things can't be fixed. Some things need to be rebuilt. Or left to rust. And maybe Clara was already rusted through. I closed the garage, set the wrench down, and took a long breath. The engine was perfect. My marriage? Corroded beyond repair. That night, the house smelled like rosemary and garlic. Her go-to seasoning for my favorite dish, pan-seared ribeye with mashed potatoes. I walked in through the mudroom like always, boots heavy with shop dust, hands still carrying the weight of what I'd read. Clara was in the kitchen, humming along to some playlist, hair pinned up, wearing the navy apron I bought her on our 3rd anniversary. For a second, it could have passed for normal. Hey babe, she said without looking up. Dinner's almost ready. I said nothing. Just set my keys on the counter and watched her move. Her earrings caught the light, new ones. Gold, delicate, probably not from the mall. And the bracelet? That wasn't from any birthday I remembered. She turned toward the stove, and I saw the necklace too. Subtle, but expensive. All of it likely bought with our joint savings. I pulled out a chair and sat, eyes following her hands as she sliced roasted carrots. She laughed at something on her phone and wiped her screen clean before setting it face down. I'd rebuilt entire engines from junkyard scrap, could diagnose a misfire by the sound of a piston, but right now I was watching a woman I no longer recognized. The way she moved, smiled, fluttered, it was all theater. And somehow, I knew I'd been cast as the fool without ever reading the script. You okay? She asked, finally noticing how quiet I was. Yeah, I said. Just tired. Long day under the hood. She smiled like that explained everything. Like I was still the man she thought would never notice. After dinner, she poured us each a glass of wine. We watched TV like normal. She curled her legs up on the couch and leaned into me. I let her. Every part of me wanted to flinch, to recoil, but I didn't. Not yet. Later, once she'd gone to bed, I stayed downstairs. Moved quiet through the hall, into the garage. My garage. The one place that was mine. Against the back wall, hidden behind a stack of tool drawers, was the server rack, the same system I used to monitor customer vehicles and dealership lots for remote diagnostics. Now, it was about to serve a different purpose. I pulled out the toolkit, opened the casing, and began wiring a new set of cameras. Smaller, hidden, efficient. Some things you fix. Others, you record. For the next few days, I played the part. Kissed Clara on the cheek before heading out. Texted her when I'd be home late. Laughed at her recycled stories like they were new. I even told her the steak was perfect, like always. But every night, after she fell asleep, I reviewed footage in the garage like it was a second job. It didn't take long. 3 days after I installed the cameras, I watched her walk through the front door at 2:17 p.m. She told me she was running errands. Instead, she'd let Ethan Wells into our home, the man who once handed me a bottle of scotch after I fixed his Bentley like we were friends. On the footage, she kissed him before he even shut the door. I didn't fast forward. I made myself sit through every second. I needed to see it. Needed it to harden inside me, to cauterize something raw. They laughed in our kitchen. She poured him my bourbon. And then, and this part burned hotter than anything, she handed him the keys to my '69 Mustang. My hands curled into fists watching them ease into the front seat of the car I'd spent 3 years rebuilding from scrap. The car that carried the same VIN as the first Mustang my dad ever owned. The one he taught me how to restore before he passed. And there they were, in it, giggling like teenagers, kissing, like my life was some prop they could borrow for an afternoon. I didn't feel rage. Not the loud kind. It was quieter than that. Cold. Purposeful. When the video ended, I saved it twice. Once to the local drive, and once to a remote server I kept off the grid. Then I made 2 USB backups and labeled them something no one would touch, just in case. From there, I started building a profile. Ethan Wells, 42, owns Wells Signature Imports, a boutique dealership specializing in overpriced European cars and overpriced self-importance. He lived 20 minutes north, in a gated community full of people who referred to their lawn guys by name. I dug in deeper. Found his business's Yelp page, his personal Instagram, the dealership schedule, and even his car enthusiast-only Facebook group where he bragged about his weekly drives upstate. Every time I found something new, I added it to a folder. A digital dossier. A growing map of a man who thought he was untouchable. But he wasn't the only one I was tracking. Clara, too. Her habits, her lies, her timing. Every door she shut too quickly, every receipt she hid, every girl's night that ended with her phone going dark for hours. I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was documenting her, piece by piece, because now I had proof. And soon, Ethan was going to learn what it felt like when a man who builds things decides to start breaking them. It started with a key fob. One night, after Clara fell asleep, I told her I was heading out to the shop to finish a late job. That wasn't a lie. But the job wasn't for a client. It was for me. Ethan's dealership had a showroom out front and a service garage in back. I knew the layout because I helped him set up a wireless car diagnostic unit last year. I knew where they kept their spare fobs, the wireless access panel, and the exact brand of security cameras they used. I parked a block away and walked the rest under cover of dark, hoodie up, gloves on. In under 15 minutes, I was inside the garage, standing over Ethan's prized Porsche Taycan Turbo. He'd posted about it all over Instagram, my reward for a record year. I cloned the key fob, disabled the onboard diagnostics remotely, and walked out the same way I came in. Quiet. Clean. No broken glass, no alarms. The next morning, Ethan posted a story. Car won't start. Electric issues. Dealer says it's a software bug. LOL. I smiled. Over the next week, the inconveniences began to pile up, each one small enough to be blamed on bad luck. His online listings vanished overnight after I slipped into his back-end admin portal and replaced high-res photos of luxury imports with corrupted files. One client emailed the dealership with a demand for a refund, something about being sold a pre-owned Maserati with a tampered odometer. That was me too. Anonymous complaints started flooding the local Better Business Bureau and auto watchdog forums. I wrote them in plain, straightforward language, just enough technical detail to be believable. Meanwhile, I watched him. I used his own security feeds, patched in through a vulnerability I'd left untouched when I first helped him install the system. I watched him pace his office, throw his phone, scream at his assistant. My favorite clip? Ethan staring at his laptop, mouth hanging open, as his Google ad campaigns were suspended. His dealership relied on digital traffic, and I'd filed enough small, perfectly timed reports to trigger a fraud investigation. He couldn't see the cracks yet, but they were there. Hairline fractures in a facade built on image. And while Ethan unraveled, Clara got bolder. She started going to yoga twice a week, coming home with wine on her breath and smudged eyeliner. She even stopped locking her phone, like I'd already surrendered. She had no idea I was documenting everything. Photos, videos, GPS logs, voice memos, every lie tucked neatly into a folder labeled dismantle. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was collecting. Because destruction, when done right, isn't loud. It's surgical. I waited until everything was ready. Not just the footage of Clara and Ethan, but the paper trail behind Ethan's carefully crafted image. Titles mismatched. Vince inconsistent. Service records conveniently missing. It was all there. He wasn't just a sleazebag sleeping with another man's wife. He was a fraud who sold premium cars with hidden defects and doctored histories. I packaged it all up into a tidy dossier and dropped it anonymously to 3 places. The local ABC affiliate's investigative tip line. A regional auto journalist who loved nothing more than exposing dealer scams. A watchdog group that specialized in dealership fraud. It didn't take long. By the end of the week, the first headline hit social media. Luxury dealer under fire for allegedly selling tampered vehicles. Photos I'd taken of manipulated odometers and mismatched Carfax reports were suddenly public. Clients came out of the woodwork, a lawyer, a software engineer, a retiree, all claiming they'd been misled. The second wave hit harder. A customer posted a TikTok rant with screenshots of their texts with Ethan. It went viral. The comments were brutal. And then the license got suspended. Just like that, the city pulled his business permit, pending investigation. I watched from my garage as a red tag was slapped onto the dealership's glass doors. My Mustang sat in the corner under a tarp, untouched since the day Ethan put his greasy fingerprints all over the steering wheel. But I wasn't done. I made fake profiles. 2 women, both just attractive enough, both following Ethan's public Instagram. I messaged 5 of the women who regularly commented on his posts, pretending to be one of his other girlfriends. I didn't even have to lie much, just asked innocent questions like, "So you're the one he spent Valentine's Day with?" Within hours, they connected the dots themselves. The blowback was fast and nuclear. One woman posted screenshots of his DMs with timestamps overlapping mine. Another found a photo of him with Clara and commented, "Wow, so this is the client he said he was helping with a classic car?" They united. It spread. Reddit threads, Facebook callouts, a carousel post on Instagram with the title, "Dealer, Cheater, Liar." His reputation disintegrated in real time. But this wasn't about Ethan anymore. This was about setting the stage. Clara still thought I was in the dark. But soon, she'd walk into a room where the lights were already on, and both of them would finally see the mirror. Setting it up took less effort than I expected. Clara thought she was meeting a potential client, someone interested in restoring a vintage Corvette for a high-end car exhibit. I used a fake Gmail account, created a fake website with placeholder text, and linked it all to a burner phone. I told her the guy was in town for one night, staying at the Beacon Grand Hotel, and wanted to meet privately to discuss a rush project. She bit immediately. "This could be huge," she said, fixing her hair in the mirror. "He sounds serious. I might need you to help with specs later if I land a job." I just smiled and said, "You've got this." Ethan was trickier. I posed as a woman named Lena, said I met him through the automotive networking group on Facebook. Told him I was a freelance buyer working with European clients and needed someone with import experience to help acquire and flip classic models discreetly. He was in the moment I said the word commission. I told them both to meet in room 804. I checked in earlier under the fake name, left the key at the front desk, and had the room prepped with a single table, 2 chairs, a bottle of cheap scotch, and a Bluetooth speaker synced to my phone. Then I waited across the street. Clara arrived first. I watched from my truck as she stepped out of a rideshare in heels, wearing the same maroon blouse she used to wear when she wanted something from me. 10 minutes later, Ethan pulled up in a borrowed SUV. His Porsche was still dead at the shop. I gave it another 5 minutes. Then I walked in. I opened the door quietly. They were both there, standing on opposite sides of the room. Clara's expression was still twisted in surprise. Ethan looked confused, like someone just pulled a curtain back and he didn't know which role he was supposed to play. "Surprise," I said calmly, shutting the door behind me. Clara blinked. "What is this?" Ethan's voice was lower. "What the hell is going on?" I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit play. The speaker crackled, then filled the room with Clara's voice from a week ago, recorded off the living room camera. "He's harmless. Pathetically obsessed with those cars." She paled. Then Ethan's voice followed. "Tell your gearhead husband I already tightened all her bolts." He swallowed hard, jaw twitching. I let them listen to the whole thing. The laughing, the kissing, the way they talked about me like I was a prop in my own house. When it ended, the silence was louder than any engine I'd ever rebuilt. I looked at Ethan. "You're done here. Get out." He started to protest, but I stepped closer. "No threats. No cops. No more warnings. You ever come near me again, this goes to every client you have left. Go." He left without another word. I turned to Clara, whose mascara was starting to smudge. "You can pack a bag when you get home," I said. "The locks change tomorrow." She looked at me like she didn't recognize who she was talking to. Maybe she didn't, because the man standing in front of her wasn't the one who polished her car. He was the one who finally saw her for what she was, and let her rust. Clara didn't go quietly. 2 weeks after the hotel showdown, she lawyered up and filed for divorce first. Classic misdirection. Claimed I was emotionally abusive, distant, and secretly unstable. She even tried to spin the surveillance as some kind of violation, painting me as paranoid and controlling. But Clara didn't realize something. I don't take things apart unless I know how to put them back together better. My attorney, Vic Castillo, had been prepping since the night I showed him the footage. The cameras were legal. They were installed in my home and my garage, both owned solely under my name. There was no hidden audio where there shouldn't be, and every minute of surveillance came with timestamped logs and metadata. We filed it all neatly. At the first mediation hearing, Clara walked in acting calm, chin up, like she was stepping onto a runway. She wore a white blouse like it meant something. But the second Vic pulled out a 3-ring binder marked Exhibit Folder A. The color drained from her face. We played just enough of the footage to set the tone. Ethan's voice calling me a pathetic grease monkey. Clara laughing and agreeing. The footage of them in my Mustang, windows fogged up, parked in my garage like it was theirs. She tried to interrupt. "That's taken out of context," she said. Vic looked at her calmly. "Ma'am, context is exactly what we have in abundance." Financial records followed. Withdrawals from our joint account lining up perfectly with jewelry she'd never worn around me. Hotel receipts under alias names. One even billed to Ethan's dealership corporate card. She dropped the abuse claim halfway through the second week. By the end of it, she walked away with almost nothing. No claim to my business. No access to the house. No stake in my cars. Just her clothes, her guilt, and whatever was left of her pride. Ethan, his career never recovered. Clients walked, reviews tanked, and word got out. He quietly sold his inventory and vanished. Rumor had it he moved to Arizona. I didn't care enough to confirm. What mattered was that it was over. Not just the marriage, the wait, the pretending, the slow rut I hadn't noticed until it was everywhere. Some things don't need revenge. Just a spotlight. And time. The rest takes care of itself. A few months passed before I realized the silence in my house wasn't empty. It was peaceful. The garage was finally mine again. I went back to working late not because I was hiding from anything, but because I wanted to. I started rebuilding an old '58 Corvette frame I'd had in the corner for years. Something about its broken, weathered shell felt familiar, but now, I was fixing it for me. That's when Laura walked in. She was a structural engineer from the university. Called about restoring a 1972 BMW 3.0 CS she'd inherited from her dad. Said it had sentimental value, and she didn't trust just anyone. I nearly told her I didn't take on long-term projects anymore, but her voice was steady, clear. She didn't try to sell me on anything. She just asked if I could help her bring it back to life. We started slow. She'd stop by to check progress every few weeks. Brought actual diagrams once, hand-drawn, color-coded, with torque specs. I hadn't seen someone prep like that since trade school. She wasn't trying to impress me. She just cared about getting it right. One night, I offered her coffee after a long session in the garage. We sat on the back porch, the kind of quiet hanging between us that didn't need to be filled. She looked at me over her mug and said, "I used to be married too. 3 years. He left the day after I paid off the kitchen renovation." We laughed, not because it was funny, but because sometimes pain is only manageable when it's shared. After that, it became routine. Wednesday nights, coffee and conversation. Saturdays in the garage. She never asked about Clara. I never asked about her ex. We let the silence explain the rest. One night, we talked about trust, what it meant now that we both knew what it looked like to be burned. Laura said something that stuck with me. Steel is strongest after it's bent and cooled again. Reshaped. That's when it holds. I looked at her and realized I wasn't holding a grudge anymore. I was holding the start of something new. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like rebuilding was just about cars. It was about me. It was a Thursday when he showed up, a younger guy, maybe early 30s, wearing a faded polo and that nervous look that gave him away before he even spoke. Said his name was Darren, worked in commercial HVAC, and followed my shop's YouTube channel. "I heard you're the guy people go to when they're dealing with personal messes," he said, awkwardly rubbing the back of his neck. I raised an eyebrow. "I fix cars, not people." He chuckled nervously. "Yeah, I know. It's just, my wife's been acting off. Phone always flipped down. Late nights that don't make sense. Her best friend keeps slipping up when she talks to me." He trailed off, eyes darting to the floor. "And you want proof?" I said quietly. He nodded. "I don't want to confront her until I know. But I don't know how to get that without going crazy. You've got that set up, right? The garage security, the tracking." I held up a hand. "Let me stop you right there, Darren. Proof is one thing, but deciding what to do with it, that's a whole different engine." He blinked. "So you're saying don't look?" "No," I said. "I'm saying if you're looking for revenge, you're already off track." I went down that road. Got the footage. Got the evidence. Took two people apart from the inside out. And it worked. I leaned against the fender of a half-stripped GTO. But you know what stuck with me? Not the payback. Not the fallout. The moment I stood in a quiet house and realized the wreckage I walked out of wasn't worth walking back into. Darren was quiet. Processing. "So what do I do?" he asked. "You gather the truth. You protect yourself. But don't let it define you," I said. "Whatever happens, take the high road. And if it ends, let it end clean." He nodded slowly, like someone who wanted to believe it, but wasn't quite there yet. Before he left, Laura stepped into the shop with 2 coffees. She handed me one, kissed me on the cheek, then waved to Darren politely. He looked between us and smiled a little. She knows, he asked. She knows everything, I said. And that, her knowing, staying, building something new with me, that was what mattered now. Not breaking people, building again. The garage had clean white walls, epoxy floors, and bay doors that opened to the hills outside Boulder. Laura and I stood in the middle of it, tape measure in her hand, blueprints rolled out on the workbench. This wasn't just a workspace. It was ours. Attached to the side of the structure was a modest 2-bedroom house with big windows, exposed beams, and no secrets. We were building it ourselves. She drew up the specs, and I handled everything that involved grease, torque, or steel. Somewhere between the beams and the concrete foundation, it stopped feeling like a project. It started feeling like a future. I was thinking a glass cabinet along this wall, Laura said, pointing to the far end of the garage. You can finally display those custom carburetors you've been hoarding. I smiled. Those are not hoarded. They're archived. She laughed. Same thing. She turned back to the plans while I installed the final piece of our new security system. A simple, efficient setup. No secret cameras. No hidden mics. Just standard locks, motion sensors, and a basic front door cam. Nothing covert. Nothing sneaky. Feels weird not installing 5 extra backup angles, I said. Laura glanced over her shoulder. You don't need to be the guy with eyes in every corner anymore. I nodded. She was right. That version of me, the man who lived under suspicion, who memorized betrayal down to the second, he had a purpose once. But not here. Not with her. When we finished for the day, we sat on the garage steps, watching the sun drop behind the tree line. Her hand found mine. Calloused fingers laced with hers like it had always been that way. I still think about it sometimes, I said quietly. Not her. Just how far I let it go before I said anything. That wasn't weakness, Laura said. You were hoping. People who hope hang on longer than they should. I looked around at the structure we were building, the exposed truth of it. No hidden rot. No fake finishes. Just real beams, laid bare and honest. I don't want to be in demolition mode anymore, I said. You're not, she replied. You're in construction. And she was right. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving a collapse. I was building something, a home, a life, where everything fit because nothing had to be hidden. Where truth wasn't a trap, but a foundation. And that was worth every scar.